Hey, everybody. Ian Bremmer from an undisclosed location. After the election, the globalists are clearly in hiding. No, look, it was a long night. Not many of us got a lot of sleep. It's been an incredibly busy day trying to unpack all of this. Obviously, I am both disheartened and surprised that Trump won yesterday, and I think it's a very significant change for the United States. I would love to see Trump do the best possible job because we need it for the country and globally. My expectations are not that. I'd be delighted to take, we'll do this as office hours. Unfortunately, I wasn't in the office particularly today. I've been running back and forth, so there's no Muppet, there's no music, there's no chance to actually get, sort of you a few minutes in advance to get all the questions running, but please post them, and I'm happy to talk with you. I will say, in terms of the actual loss itself, the demographics in the United States are what surprised me the most. They're just so different from the UK that I really didn't think that Trump was going to be able to be competitive. No question, Hillary is a very challenging, the most challenging candidate that could have been put up against him on either the Democratic or the Republican side. One piece of information I saw that surprised me, I'm sure you saw that Trump actually did get fewer votes than Romney did 4 years ago. Hillary, of course, got far fewer votes than Obama did 4 years ago. But one of the things that surprised me is, although Trump did very poorly among blacks in the United States, he did better among Hispanics. And that was true if you look at Hispanics that were English-speaking in the household. Hispanics, Spanish-speaking in the household, actually performed incredibly poorly. And frankly, I've never seen that data broken down before in any of the polls. Really should have been a miss from my perspective. I think we should have hit that. That was the one piece that came out that really surprised me, that just analytically I wasn't prepared for. Aside from that, the ground game from Hillary didn't do well, and winning the popular vote isn't the same as hitting a lot of the states where you actually have significant white, undereducated, but reasonably well employed and pretty wealthy environment, but not planning on doing so well going forward. The trajectory of this population is, of course, poor, and it's poor in Europe. The thing that worries me the most, I suppose, is that these people, when Trump does not get them jobs, when he doesn't prove the great savior, when he doesn't get massive infrastructure passed, when he has the same challenges with the debt limit negotiation that the Obama administration has, yes, in a Republican Congress. When all of that happens, you're going, what's the problem? What's the problem?
No, we're good.
Okay. When that happens, then he's still going to need to be popular, and that means going for anger. That means being divisive. I don't believe, it's wonderful to see that in the first day, everyone is trying to act like an adult. That's clearly a reason why the markets have performed better today. I don't think that's consistent. I don't think it's sustainable because the problems in the United States around this population have much more to do with structural factors. The education isn't there. The technology is displacing jobs. You cannot build a wall and suddenly change keep the technology out. You can't stop progress from happening, and this is something Trump's just not going to be able to deal with. So anyway, let's take your questions. Let's see what's going on, and I'll try to answer some. Michael Keel, no Muppet. I'm sorry, but we elected Trump, so isn't that enough from a Muppet perspective? Tyler Freeman, can Trump realistically change or scrap NAFTA? I don't think so. You can reopen it, and it's going to be damaging, and Congress is generally not going to like it, and special interests will be strongly opposed. I think what we're going to see is that Trump is going to lean on Mexico to try to get them to buy more stuff, import more for the U.S., import less from other countries. Look, at the end of the day, you see what's been happening with the peso. Mexico's economy is 90% reliant on the U.S. in terms of trade. The U.S. has an enormous amount of leverage with comparatively small and completely stuck Mexico. They don't really have any other direction to go. So if he wants to squeeze them a bit, he can squeeze them again. The danger I see with doing that is that it's reasonably likely that the next president that Mexico decides to vote for is López Obrador, someone who is Chavez-like, and much more anti-U.S., much more anti-trade, much more self-protectionist than what we've seen. And so NAFTA doesn't get unwound, but the governments that comprise NAFTA, at least two of the three, become more problematic. Nigel Gautreaux, the Paris Agreement on climate change and the Iran deal right now. Okay, a couple things here. On climate, I think Trump walks it back. He blames the Chinese for not doing more because they're doing all the emitting. The Americans want to focus on coal, want to get the jobs, want to get sort of energy going, traditional industries, and you can't do that as much if you're focused on climate. We know what Trump's preferences are. He's not a denier of climate. He said a couple wacky things 20 years ago, but the transition team for the EPA has just been the appointment is a climate denier, and if that's an indication of where things are going from the Trump administration, as it probably is, you're going to see no good things around Paris. On Iran, I'm not worried, actually. Let's keep in mind, who's Iran working with in the region? Assad, Hezbollah. How about Putin? You think Putin is going to want the United States to throw the Iran deal under the bus on day one? Absolutely not. Trump's been very careful to say he's not going to do that. Ted Cruz said he would. Trump says that he wants to toughen up the deal. I certainly think that there'll be some tough words, some rhetoric, U.S. sanctions on Iran as they exist because of ballistic missiles, Hezbollah support, terrorism, that kind of thing. Those will stay. But generally speaking, I don't see the U.S.-Iran deal changing under Trump. Jeffrey Howard, when do you want to accept the "I told you so"? All year, frankly. I mean, look, I thought that Trump was going to lose, and I've made that very clear in the piece that I put out today on LinkedIn and on Twitter. I think I posted on Facebook, but I don't remember. Today's been kind of crazy. Anyway, obviously, not only did I believe analytically that Hillary was going to win, but I strongly opposed Trump more than any political candidate in my lifetime. To be clear, I did not endorse Hillary. I did not suggest that people had to vote for Hillary. I wanted them to vote against Trump. And the reason for that is because I feared that Hillary was too much in the pocket of the establishment, of special interest. I don't like it when for-profit corporations capture the regulatory process. What we need in the U.S. and what the average American citizen needs is a government that acts as an arbiter, as a referee. And I have to tell you, I didn't think that was going to be true under a Clinton administration, but I sure as hell don't believe it's going to be true under a Trump administration. The litigiousness, the brittleness, the narcissism that he has as an individual. This is a guy who wants to pick winners and losers. This is a guy who's going to use the bully pulpit to say, I don't like that Carrier, the corporation, is taking jobs out. I'm going to squeeze them. I don't like that the Washington Post is giving trouble to me. So Jeff Bezos, Amazon, I'm going to squeeze them. That's not what you want the government to do. That's what the Russian government does. They pick winners and losers, then oligarchs all get in line behind Putin because they have no choice. I think that's what's going to happen. That's why I wanted Trump to lose. But mea culpa. I thought Trump was going to lose. He didn't. He's here now. I'm going to continue to do the best possible job giving you analysis, as I always have. Some people want to disagree with me politically. That is fine. I'm not going to block them because I don't think it serves a purpose. If you can't have an open conversation, unless someone is literally death threats against you, right? If you can't have an open conversation, then you're already losing the battle. You have to be willing to let the facts, let your analysis stand as it is, and just talk to people. And ultimately, that's what I'm trying to do here. I don't need to do this. I don't get paid for being on Facebook. It doesn't really help the brand all that much. But I do think it's important that I'm not just talking to people in the establishment, not just talking to clients that can pay a lot of money for our research. I really want to use all the analysis we have and all these people that reach out around the world, especially to young people, so we can have a more honest conversation, that we can make more of a difference. That's my goal. And so as a consequence, absolutely, you told me so. And that's where we are. Let's see. Jason Vayner, initial predictions for 2020 party realignment. No. What's wrong with you, Jason? I can't talk about another election right now. We just spent 18 months on an election. Let's stop having elections. Let's try to do anything that just focuses on, how to get through the day, the month, the year. Washington is not where it's at. It's going to get weaker. State governments, local governments, you can smoke pot in more places right now. I'm not particularly interested in that, but I suspect lots of people are. It's going to make money. Have a party. But let's not talk about the election. That's where I am. Let's see. What else do we have? Marwan Jassim. What do I think about Trump's strategy with Muslims in the U.S.? I worry about it, of course. I mean, there are a lot of people that Trump has shown he's prepared to demonize. He's more than willing to not only talk about radical Islam, but also to disparage Muslims generally, to keep them out of the country. What about all the Saudis that are coming and being educated in the United States? Are there one or two bad apples? Are there some people that want the United States, that want ill for the U.S. system? I'm sure there are. But do we want to stop these people from coming in? I mean, I fear that the Statue of Liberty is misplaced now, that it doesn't make any sense anymore. And I'm not suggesting that we just let every person come in unvetted. I think there needs to be strict vetting, but I don't want us to start demonizing portions of the population, and that includes Muslims in the United States. Do I want them to integrate? Of course I do. There's a reason, why the melting pot has historically worked, and I also do recognize that the Americans are not going to need the same number of immigrants that we've had historically. We're not, because ultimately we're not going to have the jobs. And we're going to focus more on educated people. We're going to focus more on the best and the brightest. But we should do that. We need to create a path so that our top companies actually can employ these people, and a path so that young people can come to America, can grow, and can make a difference for their lives, and can lead by example, that people back home will actually want to aspire to be more like them. Look, the way that we win as America is not by forcing people to be like Americans. It's by being like Americans ourselves, so that they're convinced, wow, that's a great place. The Soviet Union fell apart, not just because we were the world's superpower militarily, not just because we spent them into the ground, but because all of these tens of millions of people across the Eastern Bloc saw American values and said, we want that. We want that civil society. We want that right to vote. We want that ability to go and buy whatever we want. We want the American dream. And you know what? They don't feel that way anymore. And I fear that the Trump election is going to actually bookend Pax Americana, that when there's a big textbook in the future that is written about, sort of the stages of history of our world, that Pax Americana will close in 2016. And America's a great power won't. We've got the technology. We still have the military. We have the food. We're geopolitically stable. The Trump as presidency doesn't change any of those things. But the willingness of people to follow us, the willingness of people to look up to the United States, to follow our president as a leader, that's been eroded over the course of the past 10 years significantly, and it's going to erode a lot more, in my view. And that's what I think is the saddest thing about all of this. And I feel like additional questions are not coming up. How do we get them? If I can get them from someone else, that'd be good. And get the whole Eurasia Group team here. More questions? More questions? Can I have questions? I want your questions. I know there are thousands of them. I'm seeing like all the love. I'm seeing the hearts and the likes, which is, I find weird, sort of like you're making it rain likes right at the end of the day. And I don't want, let's see, now I can hear myself, which is even worse. Now I can. Okay. Let's see. Louise Pansani Simoes, what about the support of military and their budget? Yeah, of course. Trump's going to focus on hard power. He's going to spend more on the U.S. military. The defense budget is going to go up. It may be challenged, of course, by budget and debt limit. But to the extent that he's going to do more spending on anything, I think defense is actually going to be very high there. Let's see. Anwar El Malhoui says the impact on Saudi Arabia and Gulf countries. I think you mean Gulf countries, but given that it's Trump, you could mean Gulf countries, because he has actually set up golf courses in the UAE, in the Emirates. So it's both, and that's awesome, though you didn't mean it. The Saudis are not going to be happy, clearly, because if you have a president that's demonizing Muslims, even if these Gulf countries want to work with the U.S., given the fact that they're becoming more unstable and their populations are more unhappy, they're going to have to give back as hard as they get. And clearly a thing that worries me is you elect someone like Trump, the desires of an ISIS, of other organizations, terrorist organizations, to use this as a recruitment tool. ISIS and Al-Qaeda were already doing that in their videos. They find it useful. That's not good. It's not as much of a problem in the U.S. We have the vetting, we have internal surveillance, and we're a more integrated country. So even when Muslims come here, it's easier for police, for the FBI to actually get inside, learn those people, who they are, and entrap them. Frankly, I mean, you stop some that are problematic, and get some that weren't problematic, and get them to admit that they want to do something, and then you go and grab them. France can't do that. They can't even get inside. Belgium can't do that. So ultimately, I think the relationship with those Gulf countries is going to be a problem. Brian Hewitt, Gulf countries like Scotland. Trump going to go there a lot. If Scotland goes Skexit, I think that Trump's going to like that. Let's see. Marcus Keppinger, how do you comment the fact that 50% of the U.S. population voted for him? Not true. I think it was like 47% voted for him. And of course, more people voted for Hillary. Now, historically, when you've had more people voting on either side, and they don't get the election, people don't understand the electoral college, they complain. But the fact that Hillary conceded quickly means that's not going to be very much of an issue in this case. But look, it depresses me. I mean, there's no question that lots of Americans think that the government has done nothing for them. What depresses me more than the fact that 47% of voters turned out for Trump is the fact that so many people didn't vote. Fewer Americans voted in this election. Fewer Americans voted for Trump than Romney. Vastly fewer Americans voted for Hillary than Obama. In other words, the most important election of my lifetime, had relatively anemic turnout because most Americans think the system doesn't really work for them, and they're apathetic, and they're pretty wealthy, and they're not going to starve, and so they don't want to deal. They don't want to turn out. They don't want to bother, right? That's a horrible thing. That worries me a lot more. What about the Supreme Court? Well, I mean, obviously you're going to have conservative nominees. It's going to swing it back, and I have a hard time imagining that Trump's going to have too much difficulty getting them through, given the Republicans' control of the House and Senate. Let's see. Marcus Keppinger, are 50% of the population wrong? 50% of the population is always wrong about something, right? There's no question. The reality is, I don't think people that voted for Trump were wrong. I don't personally believe that they were mostly racist. I don't believe they were deplorables. I don't believe they were without value. I think there were a lot of white, undereducated men and women who saw that their livelihoods were going away. They saw globalization and changes in jobs and changes in the U.S. population, and no one was paying attention to them. No one was empowering them. No one was doing anything for them. You can't ignore people for decades and pretend it's fine. I'm incredibly sympathetic to these people. I grew up with these people. I don't want to tell you about the projects again. You don't need that. But the fact is, there's no question, me living in Manhattan, all of my friends, none of them wanted Trump. Of course not. They were happy with Hillary. Hillary would have been fine for me because Hillary's a globalizer. She's a Davos woman. Her husband's Davos man. Remember, they invited me to be on the stage with him at the Clinton Global Initiative, even though I'm not a Democrat. They would have been fine for me, but they wouldn't have been fine for the country. They weren't going to fix any of the things that were going wrong. And that worries me. But Trump is not going to fix the things that are going wrong, and he's going to be much more divisive, and America's role in the world is going to be much worse, much weaker. So, I mean, the choice was bad, but ultimately the Trump choice, I truly believe, is worse. Am I going to get over myself? Of course. We're in this world, and we've got to analyze it. We have to assess it. We have to live with it. So, I mean, I'm not going to stick my head in the sand. I'm not that kind of a person. You can't do the work I do and pretend that, you were right about something when you weren't. That's why I'm not taking down my old posts that say, I think Trump's going to lose. We don't need to sanitize it. Let people say what they want. It's fine. Ultimately, good work over a long period of time shows itself as true and honest. And no one has a crystal ball. No one gets it right all the time. All you can do is share your best possible thoughts and analysis and have a conversation. And if there are those of you that really have a problem with that, you're probably on the wrong page. Most of you don't have a problem with it, but occasionally like being snarky, and some of you are just automated and probably like AI-type trolls. And those of you, unfortunately, I don't have a program that allows me to identify who isn't a human being. But if you read Wired last month and saw what they're doing at Jigsaw, the part of Alphabet, you realize that automation is coming to all of the social media, and soon The automated trolls, I think, are going to be a thing of the past. So that, I think, will happen. And Twitter, certainly, I think they're going to move away from all of the anonymity because people are finding it less useful, and it's going to hurt Twitter's ability to make money, which at the end of the day is a big deal. If there's no TPP, says Luciano Cervellini, what a great name, what is the next big trade deal? And the answer is there is no next big trade deal. What do you want? Canada, Europe? That's a pretty small trade deal, nothing big. The Chinese are going to do a bunch of smaller deals with lower standards, but ultimately China's driving much more of the architecture that exists right now. What we see in the West is going to be relatively small beer. Hassan Mahmoud, what do I think about TPP now? It is dead, as is the Asian pivot by the United States. A lot of Asian allies going to be pivoting towards China as a consequence. Watch what the Philippines ends up doing. Watch what other countries do in terms of the Philippines. Adriano Vieira says, you look so sad. I'm not sad. I'm tired. I slept like 4 hours last night and still snuck in a workout and had to write this long piece. So I'm tired. And I'm hosting the UN Secretary General tonight at my house. And it's not going to be over till like 11. And I'm doing this in part because I love you guys and in part because I don't want to fall asleep. So a couple more, just a couple more. Chris Mullins, do I think the U.S. Embassy will be moved to Jerusalem? Possible. It's one of the things that Trump is going to open up, I think. Well, let's see. You saw that Netanyahu was really quick to say Prime Minister loves you, Trump. Very smart. No downside for that, right? You're Netanyahu. You didn't like Obama. What the hell? Make him look good. I think that's possible. Let's see. Julian Kanya, do I think we can consider Marine Le Pen a future French president after this election? Given how wrong the polls have been about populism, I would normally say no. I don't want to say no. Let's do some studying. Let's see where the French are. Certainly, Italian referendum going to be more problematic going forward. Eric Boston, what happens to Hillary's political career? She's almost 70. I think it's kind of like, quietly into the sunset. She's not going to do so much. This is driving a spike into the Clintons. And saddest thing, Obama's legacy. And here's a guy that a lot of people liked when he left office, 55% approval ratings, higher than any president leaving office since Carter, aside from Reagan's second term, Clinton's second term, and his legacy is largely going to die. And I think that's really sad for a guy that I think tried pretty hard, actually, made a lot of mistakes, and I was not always on side with him, but on balance, that's pretty depressing, and he knows it. And my God, did he deliver the right message, as did Biden, on the stage today. Incredibly hard to do. I can't imagine how difficult that was for him, and that was a class act. And I hope everyone recognized that. We need much more of that going forward if our country is going to continue to be the country that we all hope that it would be. So again, have a great night, everybody. Great morning. Great wherever the hell you are. See y'all.